There are a few more iconic shapes than the Volkswagen Type 2 van. It's instantly recognisable with a cult following the world over. But try as it may, it's dabbled in a few concepts over the years, VW has never managed to recreate this magic. Until now. This is the new Volkswagen ID Buzz, a Type 2 for the electric age. The production version will be revealed in the coming weeks, but Volkswagen has very kindly invited us to its UK HQ for a walk around of what it hopes will become a new electric icon.
It doesn't take too much imagination to virtually peel back this camouflage and have a look at what this car looks like underneath. Don't you think Volkswagen, on this evidence alone, has done a great job of preserving the character of the original with a modern edge? Take this flat front end, for example. It's quite similar to the original, okay? You don't sit over the front axle like you did before, but because this thing's rear-wheel drive, just like the original, you get the same long wheelbase, short overhangs, and plenty of space inside.
In time, there will be multiple versions of the ID Buzz. As well as a panel van, there'll be an MPV with windows and up to 8 seats, plus eventually an electric camper, complete with bed, fridge, and hob.
At the back, there's even more choice. You can have a single-piece tailgate that lifts up in one, or you can get some wing-style doors, more common on commercial vehicles like this. But otherwise, full-width light bar, massive VW badge, there's absolutely no mistaking exactly what this is.
In addition to the standard ID Buzz, the one we've got here, a long wheelbase model will also feature at some point in the future. Ironically, we understand that the wheelbase on these won't change, but instead, they'll benefit from some extra length over the rear axle.
Okay, let's just run through a few facts and figures. I've got the spec sheet here in front of me. This is fully electric, rear-wheel drive. You will be able to get four-wheel drive models later with another motor on the front axle, but this one is just rear-wheel drive. It's got a 77 kilowatt-hour battery, same as the biggest ID3. It's got 201 brake horsepower, 310 Newton meters of torque, and a top speed of 99 miles an hour. But what about space inside? We can't actually get inside this van, unfortunately, at the moment. It's still a prototype, but we have got some numbers again here on the spec sheet. So it's 4.7 meters long and 1.97 meters tall, but crucially, it's got a 3-meter wheelbase.
Now, all of that equates to 4 cubic meters of carrying capacity. That might not mean a lot to you, but we've been assured that this thing should carry 2 Euro pallets and therefore should meet the needs for most looking to run an ID Buzz for business.
But enough of the numbers. Should we take this thing for a drive?
Based on Volkswagen's already successful MEB platform for electric vehicles, the ID Buzz's batteries are mounted low for a favourable centre of gravity and what the company calls balanced weight distribution. But this is no ordinary van. Volkswagen says it's going to come loaded to the roof with cutting-edge tech, including Park Assist Plus with a memory function, which means you can actually teach your van to park itself in specific spaces. Plus Travel Assist with swarm data, meaning your car can communicate with others for safer semi-autonomous driving.
So we're very lucky to be given an opportunity to drive this ID Buzz. It is a pre-production vehicle, but it has come down the exact same line as the production models will later this year. So there's just a few little changes that we need to bear in mind. Inevitably, most of those come down to quality, although we are assured that the scratchy plastics on the side here in the passenger version rather than the commercial version that we got here will be improved. But in terms of what this thing is actually like to drive, well, the first thing you notice is this hugely commanding driving position. You sit up high, you've got a nice armrest, and you've got a great view of the road ahead. Not so much behind and to the sides, but that is inherently a problem with commercial vehicles.
Of course, if you go for the passenger version, these issues are likely to be negated, with huge side windows making lane changes and manoeuvring much easier. That said, most models should get a reversing camera as standard, problem solved.
But this van is based on the MEB platform, so it's identical, pretty much identical, underneath to something like an ID3 or an ID4. And luckily, I came here today in an ID3, so it's pretty easy for me to draw some parallels between that car and this one. Number one, though, is agility. You don't expect a car like this to feel quite so agile through the corners. It's responsive, it stays pretty flat, and the ride on the whole is really very good. Like the ID3, it is quite firm, but it's controlled. You never get shakes or rattles in the cabin, and that's a good thing. And in a commercial vehicle, it's not something you expect. That responsiveness doesn't just apply to the handling, though. Obviously, with 200 horsepower, this thing feels pretty quick in a straight line as well. But it's not just 200 horsepower, it's all that torque from a standstill. It's like no real commercial vehicle that we've driven before. We understand that there are more powerful models on the way, as well as a four-wheel drive version, so if you want a little bit more power, it will be offered, but in all honesty, this thing ticks a lot of boxes.
Prices and specs haven't been revealed, but expect a similar range of trims and equipment to what you find on Volkswagen's existing ID models. Performance figures will be disclosed at a later date too, but having hopped out of an ID3 and straight into the Buzz, it truly didn't feel much slower.
Of course, around town, the ID Buzz feels very easy to drive. You've got that elevated driving position and everything is whisper quiet. When you bring it out onto a twistier road like we are on now, it's remarkably agile. There are very few commercial vehicles or vans that you would call fun to drive, but this is definitely one of them. And on a motorway environment at 65, 70 miles an hour like we're doing now, this thing is really quiet. You normally expect shakes and rattles from behind when it comes to driving a van, but not in this thing. And this thing's a pre-production version as well. That certainly bodes well for the passenger versions and the California and all of those versions that are still to come.
The exterior camouflage will be removed when the production version of the ID Buzz is revealed in March. But as we mentioned earlier, it's not hard to imagine what it might look like. In fact, just take a look at the ID Buzz concept from 2017 and you won't be far off.
Can't tell you an awful lot about this interior because it is covered up in most places, but you can see in front of me here we've got a very conventional dial cluster, quite similar to the one you'll find on an ID3 with a little bit more information. The screen in the middle, again, very similar. You get the same climate controls and volume controls that you would on that car.
When it comes to range and charging, while Volkswagen hasn't yet revealed official figures, we were seeing a trip reading of around 180 miles with 77% charge remaining, and we certainly weren't driving particularly economically. That, give or take, should see a comfortable real-world range of 240 to 260 miles or a bit more in the summer months. While again unconfirmed, we expect the ID Buzz to match other MEB cars, 135 kilowatt peak charging speed, for a 10 to 80% top-up in just over half an hour.
So in conclusion then, this is relatively comfortable, it's relatively agile, it's actually pretty good fun to drive, and I certainly didn't think I'd be saying that about a van when I woke up this morning. This feels like the first electric van that people will buy, not just because it saves them money, but because it actually fits into their lifestyle and offers them something a little bit different. And now there is just one thing left to do, and that is to park it up and revel in this car's ridiculous turning circle. It almost pivots on a knife edge. It is so agile. Less than 11 meters turning circle. Volkswagen vans have a cult following unmatched anywhere else in the market, and while this thing might feel like it's been a long time coming, it feels more relevant than any electrified commercial vehicle to date. It's spacious, it's refined, it's good to drive, and with such a scalable platform, the sky's the limit. Me? I'm looking forward to the electrified camper.
Head to DrivingElectric.com for all the latest electric and hybrid car advice, news and reviews, and check us out on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Finally, while you're here, make sure you hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and turn on notifications to ensure you never miss a video.